Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Putting the Horse First. I am here today with Helen Thornton, and she is a horse physio in the UK, and she's going to tell us all about her physio work with horses. So, Helen, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. This is still a new podcast. I'm always thrilled whenever somebody's willing to come on and talk to me.
You're
So
welcome.
thank you for that. So you can start out. Why don't you tell us a bit about how you got into horses?
Mine was not a typical route into horses because I had no influence as to parents being horsey or anything like that. And I just nagged. My parents
Good
for
for
a
you.
long time.
Well done.
From a very young age. One of my birthday presents as a young child was a horse riding lesson, and that was that. So basically from that, my mum and dad being normal working people, my mum was a nursery teacher and my dad an electrician, so again, nothing to do with farms or anything like that. But they just wanted to support me, I suppose, and did their best. So I got a sanctuary pony at the age of 10, which we had for 6 months, which was obviously wouldn't have known them, but obviously a very damaged pony and would just bolt blindly or the usual, run backwards down ditches with me. And in the end, we thought it was safer that the pony went back to the sanctuary and lived an unridden life. And then from that, I bought my first pony, who was my soulmate, and we did everything, joined pony club, became part of all the teams, went around the country, part of the Prince Philip Cup Gymkhana teams, which was great fun, doing the vaulting and
neat.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I couldn't do that now. I'd probably fall on my face. and then went to the dressage teams and jumping, so kind of had a real overall pony that was fantastic in just about every area. And then the one thing that she wasn't too keen on was show jumping. We would always stop by the fourth fence. So as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, that made me think, why? So from that age is when I started to think about their physical limitations, capabilities, and why. I was always thinking, and that got me quite known on a lot of yards where I was asked to ride quite a lot of different ponies and horses. And so I got too big for my pony, and we sold her to an amazing family who agreed to keep her until she was retired, which they did, and gave me a back when she was retired. And then I went straight onto a ex-racehorse at the age of 14. You should not do. But again, it was the best thing ever. And he was my second soulmate. And I had him till he was 32. Did all the things that I'm now saying don't do. I used the Pessoa back then. I did everything, and lunged in the traditional English way where you are not changing anything. You're just rebuilding what's good and you're just weakening what's weak. But that horse was a saint, and we did a lot together, from county working hunter to hunter trials and dressage. He was amazing, but probably the dressage that I now go away from. That's the truth.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but again, as a thoroughbred, they can be sensitive to their environment. I mean, all horses are. So he was quite a neurotic thoroughbred to begin with, to look after, which the livery yards didn't quite like when he would bring himself in, or he would wind himself up over mares. And so I would just sit in the field with him quite a lot, trying to work out how can I get this horse happier, because our ridden life was becoming amazing, but to look after, it was quite a nightmare. So he taught me a lot. I mean, everybody can't do this, but when the property that I've got now didn't have, it just had land, there was no stables, no arena, and I'd already got the information of how to set up and where to put the stables, so that every paddock met up at the stables and there was no field out at the back, so you've got a horse out at the end, if you've got different horses in different paddocks, if you do separate mares, which I did back then and I don't anymore. So just simple things like knowing that about how you set up your yard so your horse is not stressed because they're out, what I call out on a limb. They're the one that's going to get eaten because they're shoved out on the outer circle if you've got them in the paddock furthest away. It was little things like that I learned. Really good stuff that I realise now not everybody picks up on about why their horse is stressed. And that's just one example of a million. I then actually, after university, where I studied equine science, which was the only choice we had back then, there was no veterinary physio degrees like there is now. I then studied with Mary Bromler and did sports therapy diploma and many different CPD modules with myofascial release, all that kind of thing, and just put it together as my own understanding from these therapies. Along the way, I've had various different horses, done various different things, and I suppose suppose now I'm at that stage where I don't want to do anything majorly competitive, but I just want to enjoy my horse and then move correctly. In between my uni days, I was jockeying. I was a work rider for a racing
wow.
yacht. So thoroughbreds really are my thing. And while I was a jockey, I was getting serious aches and pains and I only had two major incidents, to be fair. I only had two major incidents, but that led to various injuries. And I found something called the bowing technique for myself, just way the universe puts things together for us, I suppose. And I read about it in a magazine one day and thought, I'm going to look this up. And I live very rural in the middle of nowhere. And it turned out there was a gentleman in the next village, 5 miles away, that did the bowing technique. Crazy. Oh. So I went along and I had a treatment and was kind of amazed how different I felt. So I trained in the bowing technique for people. Did that for 1.5 years. And I suppose that's how I started with the extra CPDs and then putting together how I wanted to treat horses. And so what that led to was me doing various different injuries which happen in life. I went snowboarding and fell hard down a mountain, and that really did mess me up in quite a serious way, much more than any horse ever has. And from that led to what I now know was I just couldn't breathe properly. I basically fell on my head at a certain angle and injured the collarbone and the brachial plexus for the shoulders. For 24 hours, I was kind of unable to move my right arm at all. I was paralyzed for like 24 hours with that arm and didn't really understand the catastrophicness that I'd done to myself. You know, back then, this is many years ago, and nobody really was harping on about breathing or anything back then. And that most adults breathe incorrectly. So that led me down the path for myself of discovering how bad my breathing was and how that is a catalyst to the body just unraveling. I then started to play around with what can I feel on a horse, because at the end of the day, we sit on theirs to ride. So that led me about 10 years ago deciding that I wanted to study the equine osteopathy, because the visceral is extremely important in that training. But at the time, it was very expensive. And by the time I decided, right, I'm going to do this, COVID hit. So I had to wait until after that. So now I am halfway through, proving, gosh, why did I not do this earlier? It's the question of what does it mean to me to put the horse first? Where I'm at is I know that my education is never going to stop. It's a never-ending journey. And things change, things evolve. Like when I was a child using the damper sewer, and so I think for me, I'm continuing always my knowledge. So I'd like to provide a horse owner's course so that people can get some extra tools in their kit and extra skills in their kit, so that, say for example, their horse has an incident, it's stood on a rope and pulls back. That can be catastrophic, the back of the skull, or they've slipped on the wet, or they've slipped on a road or whatever, or they've had no incident, but they're actually traveling a lot, and the owner knows that traveling a lot is extremely tiring on the body. Or they do compete their horse a lot and they know they're having downtime, so let's see how the horse feels. If they've got those skills to be able to do body checkups and know if something's not right, and then also they've got some very gentle skills that can help assess whether the training they're doing is creating the benefit that they want. So I teach a couple of dead easy exercises which allow the owner to check whether the thoracic function is actually there at all. If it's not, you can then keep checking it throughout your training. Is it becoming there? So same as the midsection, does it actually move or is it locked up? And same with the pelvis. And these are real easy checks that I can teach people, and they'll get it to varying degrees, but the more they practice, the more they'll understand it. I think that's where I'm at, is putting the horse first means passing on some education and some knowledge, which is not the usual. It's not massage or even your basic anatomy, which I think is brilliant. It needs to be out there. It's more just having these checkups that you can do to know your horse's limitations and if there's anything not quite right. At the minute, I've made it into a 2-day course for horse owners, and it's just It's just a case of getting it out there and letting people know that how it will benefit them as an owner. It's a mixture of what I call rhythmic somatic exercises. It's very gentle. There's no manipulation. There's no direct force, anything like that. I think that obviously should be left to the qualified people. It's a mixture of that with some structural therapy, which is just to drop the horse down what I call down that staircase of stress. So if you can help the horse to re-inhibit their body and to let go of unwanted tension and unwanted stress, which creates a relaxation and change in the body, which then has a global effect, then I think the owners have got some extra skills that are really valuable. And also knowing the difference, whether actually something's happened. Do I need my therapist or do I need my vet? Because a lot of owners seem to be complicated. They don't seem to understand the differences to who they need, and just making it clear, if you've got a horse that's in need of a vet, do get the vet. It's not manipulations. It's more rhythmic exercises that really take the horse into a different zone. So I think the first time that I came across this, I was actually on a human training course called NKT therapy, which is neurokinetics therapy. And I was so sore myself that they couldn't, when you go on human training courses for people of any body work, you're the guinea pigs for each other.
Yeah.
I couldn't be anybody's guinea pig because I was so incredibly sore. Nobody could touch me.
Oh boy.
And one of the trainers got me off the massage couch and was like, just come over here, and just got me to do some rhythmic breathing motions. And within 5 minutes, I went into the biggest myofascial unwinding you have ever seen. It sounds crazy to explain it, but unless you've experienced it, and it didn't feel scary, it was really nice, but I was kind of uncontrollably shaking in many various areas of my body, and it was all where I'd had injury. It was all where I was shut down. It was so interesting. And every time I have diaphragm work done on me since, nothing as big as that reaction, because I obviously dropped down the staircase in that moment quite a lot. I continued to yawn for 3 hours after that.
Oh, wow.
It was. And this was just rhythmic motions while breathing. In particular areas, put my arms in particular areas. It was nothing much. And I think you seek things out for a purpose. And I always say, I wish I'd not had my injuries. But they've kind of given me an extra level of understanding how you can really understand the body on a deeper level. I think for me, it's a case of providing that for horse owners, but they can't do any damage. They can't do any damage to the horse with these techniques. They can only help the horse. And I think, obviously training is part of that to de-stress the horse. Correct fitting equipment is part of that. Good foot balance is part of that. It's about the whole team working together.
Fitting. I hate to open up a can of worms, but where are you on saddle fitting has gone through this whole evolution and where they were encouraging everyone to get saddles properly fit. And now it seems like it's come back around on itself where what I think in their place where people get their saddle fit checked every 3 months or something. I mean, the horse changes so quickly that saddle fit is 2 weeks later, it's not going to fit the same as it fit when the saddle fitter was there.
And I agree. And I think this is another reason why, originally I never thought I'd be doing courses for horse owners. It wasn't a goal, but that's exactly that. I think, and I feel sorry for the saddle fitters, because you are fitting a rigid structure to a moving structure with another moving structure sat on top. So it's not easy. And I think if owners have got checkups that they can do within the body, and they get a new saddle or they get it adjusted, and that equine body has felt this way for so long, and all of a sudden it doesn't feel the same, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah, you know, because you've got those tools to check. You're not in this ever-ending confusion, because everyone wants the best for the horse. And I always say, horses don't need your sympathy; they need your empathy. And
that's a good. I like that. Yeah,
and they do talk, and we all know. Well, most of us know. I'm no behaviourist. That's not what I've studied. But we all know that they do talk with body language. And for me, their actions say a lot. Their actions and their expressions. So even though I'm no equine behaviourist, I've not studied it at all. Just as a therapist, putting hands on, or when I go to a horse and I'm stood talking to the owner, I'm also looking out the corner of my eye. I always say that I've got eyes in the back of my head, the side of my head, and everywhere else, because while I'm talking to the owner, I'm getting an impression of how the horse is stood, how the horse maybe is shifting its weight, or it stood at a hay net and it stands in a certain direction at that hay net constantly. So then you ask the question,
Yes.
you know, does this horse come in overnight and have a hay net for 12 hours? Yes. It'd be really interesting to put a camera up, because I have a funny feeling, so it can see its best friend in the opposite stable. It stands on a particular angle. And for 12 hours every night, stood on a particular angle, it's going to affect the body. And it's this minute detail that can sound crazy to some people, but I've seen it for nearly 20 years, what effect it can have and how that can travel through the body and all these things if we can just acknowledge them. But back to saddle fit. I'm not a trained saddle fitter, but this is the problem. The horses can change, especially young horses. They're not going to change the skeletal frame, the older horses, but of course they're going to change the muscle structure. If all of a sudden the rider doesn't do jumping anymore and they've got off the horse and they're doing groundwork to just rehab something, then that horse is going to change a lot weekly.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It really is difficult.
No, it's very tricky. I have my personal horse right now. When I bought him, I'm 6 foot tall. And when I bought him, I was riding Icelandic, which are little ponies. I wanted a big horse. I wound up with a 17 one-hand Dutch harness horse. I got him a very fancy saddle. It was $6,500, which is as much as I paid for my car when I bought my car. And he was fine in the very fancy saddle. I got him for about 2 years, and then he's not fine. And I worked with the saddle fitter remotely. And finally, one day I pulled out, which I've put many, many miles in. I love the Ensor saddles, the old ones, which are basically a bareback pad. There's nothing to them except, whatever padding you add underneath. And this thing has duct tape on it. And this thing has been used a lot. I threw that on him, and within a week, like every day, he was better and better and better and better. So I now have the $6,500 saddle sitting in the closet, and I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to sell this thing. My old Ensor, which I've replaced the billets on 3 times and really needs to get fixed up. And he loves that. And I'm like, well, that's great, horsey. And the thing is that the fancy expensive saddle that I actually got to fit me too. It's got a 19-inch seat and a super long flap, and the horse does not like it now.
Yeah.
I have this 21-year-old saddle. So I'm like, well, that's annoying. And I can't really jump a saddle because it's a little bit too small for me. But the horse is much happier in it. I'm like, very annoying.
Yeah, and that's the thing you've noticed with your horse, probably via the way he moves, his expressions, etc. You've noticed what is happy and what is not. And I've heard of this quite a lot, where people have changed saddles and got a saddle that now apparently fit, and yet the horse is much unhappier than before. And then you have to go down this whole road of, well, is that because he was more comfortable being shut down? And you go down this road, you do. And I just think horses are designed, no matter what, to look okay to the eye, because they do not want to get eaten. That is just how they think. So you can walk and trot a horse up forever in a day, unless it's seriously compromised and needing a vet. And of course, physios and osteopaths, you're going to see what the pelvis is doing, how heavy they're landing on different feet, etc. And that's not what I'm going to teach a horse owner on a course. I'm going to teach them to do some checkups, that you don't need to have a great eye. You don't need to be trained. You can do these checkups and they don't lie. So, for example, does the horse's jaw move equally to both sides? Or
okay, cool.
Picking up a front limb and checking if there's any front end trauma, which 80% of horses that I see, there's a trauma pattern in one shoulder. Every 80% of horses that I see. If you can teach a horse owner to just check that, it's just extra information that they can pass on to their professional when they visit. But it's also, I then do give them the hands-on techniques that they can do to try and start to unwind that horse. I think the first things that I teach is what's in the mind is in the body, and what's in the body is in the mind. And my journey was an absolute catalyst for me realizing this and seeking out certain training for when I was doing a lot of human training, because I was never never a panic kind of person or a worrier or anxiety. But the longer and the more years that went on that I couldn't breathe properly, the more that some anxiety would set in. And it works both ways. We all know people who have a panic attack can't breathe. It works both ways. You could have a real traumatic injury falling down a mountain, and eventually that change that's happened in your body, where things have just not got the room to move that they should have, then can lead to things like anxiety. And I know that to be factual because it's happened to me. So why is that different for a horse? Yeah, you seek out trainers that know how to help a horse regulate. And I think it has to come from every aspect of management, training, comfort, and the horse. You've got your two different types of horses, where you've got your really expressive horses that really let you know. They really let you know. And then you've got your ones that are kind of shut down. And they don't say much. And you'll tack them up, and they're not the horses that are biting the walls. They're the horses that don't notice you've arrived with the saddle, which is also just as bad as a horse biting a wall when you arrive with the saddle. They have no interaction. They stand there, they hold their breath. They're not moving, they're not looking at you, they're not acknowledging you, and they just kind of cope while you put the saddle on, knowing full well that for them, that means a bit of discomfort. See the opposite end of the scale all the time. And actually, I think your shut down ones are probably the more dangerous ones. They're the ones at some point are going to explode.
Shut down horses are tricky. In the past several years, I met a few shut down horses. I could not believe how shut down they were. And I was like, I probably worked with these horses when I was younger, but just didn't notice it. And now I'm noticing, and I'm like, oh boy, wow, this is, how could I have ever had a horse like this before and not, it just didn't hit me smack in the face.
On the last horse owners course that I did, I allowed someone to bring and drop off their pony to be an extra pony for the weekend. And this pony was a typical jumping pony, a child's pony. So they're kind of very whizzy and they're very fast around the jumps, and that's how they go. And that builds up certain things over the years. That pony literally is a typical case of what I call dropping down the staircase.
Okay.
When they brought him, they'd had the saddle fitter out because he wasn't letting them get near him with the saddle. It was difficult to catch, difficult to touch the ears, a lot of your typical things. And he was here for the full last day, so he had plenty of practice on him. And basically the next time I saw him, and that was actually 2 to 3 months later, due to people's schedules and whatnot, pony was a completely different pony. So different. And that was just from being there as a practice pony. And they said it's so much happier, lets you catch him. They went back to riding him. And of course, these things will rebuild. Of course they will. That pony goes that way, and he's a jumping pony. The pony's probably got a year or two with this child, and that's life. But they still want the best for the pony and care for the pony. It's just a little clue as to how much you can help them just by very simple exercises. And that pony obviously then went on to regulate himself a lot more than what he was doing beforehand.
That's great.
It's not always about the incredibly different and change in posture, because for some horse owners that just stress them out because they can't see it, or it might stress them out because they're being a healthy skeptic and thinking, but haven't just changed the position of the horse? And honestly, therapists who are putting up before and after pictures are not doing that, because it's really not worth it. For me, I always take a picture of where the horse chooses to stand, and it's never prepped, if you like. It's just that horses choose to stand and rest in a different way afterwards to how it was stood and resting beforehand. So then you can see the changes. But I think if the owner can't recognize that kind of thing, but they know their horse, they really know their horse, they know how relaxed or tense their horse is in certain situations. They know how happy or not happy he is to be fed when other horses are getting fed. It's just a simple one. Some horses need to be the first in that barn to get fed. Otherwise, all hell lets loose. So people do know their horses. They do. They just might not know things from a postural view, which can take years to train, if not your thing. So I'm saying if you need to leave that to the professionals, or you want to learn something about it, then maybe learn to feel it. And I think the inside out what's in the mind is in the body, what's in the body is in the mind. It's very clear to feel when you are checking particular areas, such as the shoulder girdle, which is the thoracic sling. Is it functioning? Are they able to engage it? Or is it down on the floor? And if you can feel that in your horse and you know, but you couldn't see it, but you can feel it, you then start to do your training because you know your horse needs to go differently. You're getting so many injuries, or somebody's helping to educate you and you've realised, yes, okay, my horse does need to go better. If you can do these checks and know, right, this is working, this training that I'm doing is working because now I have got mobility. That's what I want to teach people because it's foolproof.
All right, that's awesome. So if people wanted to reach out and get in touch with you, and how would they find you?
So at the minute, it's in-person course in the UK. I'm hoping next year to get it online. What I am offering for people who are obviously not in the UK is one-to-ones that I can do via Zoom sessions, and they've worked really well because they send me the information beforehand of any history, any veterinary history, any pathology, and what's going wrong. And then because they're on the Zoom and on the camera, I can exactly direct where I want their hands to be and really explain what they need to be feeling and just keep on going until we get it. And it's proven to be not that hard. Stops people misinterpreting by me putting something online, which I'm not sure I'm ready to do yet, because it is something you've got to feel. Obviously, in person, I'm able to move somebody's hand or say your body language is just a bit too much, you need to just relax or whatever. So if I've got a camera, I can do the same thing. My website is my name. It's just www.helenthornton.com. And my Facebook page is Equine Sports Therapy and PEMF, which should be easy to find, or just put my name in. And they
Gotcha. All right. I will make sure I put those in the show notes. But I appreciate you coming to talk to me. It's been very nice of you to share your time with me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.